expressions to refer to different times. So for example, we have here a few to express about the past. For example, here it says a few years ago, in the past, in the 19th century, or in the 60s. Okay? So this is what we're trying to express something that has changed over the time. So here we have a question. How have housing changed? Okay, so we refer to as a certain situation or something that have changed over the time, and that this is how we express the time contrast. Okay, so for the present we have the following expressions. For example, these days, today, nowadays, this year, recently, lately. Okay, obviously this is going to be followed by your idea. How have this changed? For example, here in the future, you can say soon, or you can say in 20 years, in the future, in the next 100 years, or in a year from now. Okay, what is going to happen then? So you make predictions about what you think is going to happen to this specific topic. So I wrote an example here, but first of all, I would like to explain. I underlined these words here because, for example, a few years ago is an expression that we use to talk about a certain amount of, I don't know, years or months, days, okay, in the past. So for example, I can say a few years ago, or I can say 10 years ago, 2 years ago, or for example here, in the 19th century, okay, or I can say in the 18th century, okay, so I'm talking about the 1800s or the 1900s, for example, which is the case, the next one. In the 1960s, okay, so I can change this number with whatever the number I want, okay, whatever I want to say, I don't know, something happened then, well, I can use that expression. So I have a question here. It says, how have housing changed? Okay, and I don't know if you're familiar with the term housing, but housing is what represents the family. So mom, dad, children, how do they live, and what is the interaction they have. So that can refer to the relationship, who pays what are the roles that they have within the house. Okay, so for example here, I said, in the past, women used to stay at home. Okay, so I put here a comma and I underline the expression, and here is the why. Because we're going to have a comma right after the expression if the expression is in the beginning of the sentence. But, however, if the expression is in the last part of the sentence, which is the second case, we are not going to use a comma there, okay? I also want you to remember the expressions that we learned to use the past tense. For example, here, we use used to for an action that was current and that is not longer happening. So, for example, when I was a child, I used to go to school every day. That means that today I no longer go to school, okay? So, and we can also have to remember that the verb must go in the past, okay? So we're using the past, we use our verbs in the past. So here, second example. People like to do outdoors activities in the 1960s, okay? With that, I'm saying that maybe nowadays people don't like to do that anymore, okay? So if we go to the next example, which is the present, I am gonna make a contrast about the same question. How is housing now that is different than housing yesterday or a few years back, okay? So now, let's take a look here. Nowadays, both mom and dad work to pay for the housing. So that means that both of them have to work in order to pay for expenses, utilities, water, electricity bills, whatever that might be, okay? And now we're gonna take a look at the future. Okay, so we can also see it in the future, and we have a few expressions here that you might not be familiar with. For example, soon. Soon means pronto, okay? Something that is more likely to happen in a short period of time, okay? in 20 years ago, 20 years from now, sorry, in the future, in the next 100 years, or in a year from now. Okay, so here we're going to add from now, just to make sure that that's understood. Okay, in a year from now, you could say, or in a year. Okay, so it's not mandatory, it's possible to say. Okay, so we have here a few ideas to compare the same question that we have been comparing. Okay, for example, in the future, children will be most of the time alone. Okay, I am making a prediction about the future regarding the housing, how housing is going to change in the future. Okay, the same thing for the second example. There will be robots taking care of babies the next 100 years. Okay, in the next 100 years. So now, I want to encourage you to do the same. Okay, and we have 3 topics on the top. Okay, which is education, technology, and entertainment. Okay, I want you to try to do your little chart. Okay, and make some examples. Just a couple of questions, and answering this question. How have these changed over the years? Okay, just a couple of sentences to express that. I don't know, education. How have education changed over the years? I don't know. In the past, education used to be about reading, writing. Nowadays, education is more likely to be independent through resources and technology. In the future, children will no longer have teachers, for example. Okay, so that is one example. I encourage you to try it, and a piece of paper, give some examples of your own, and if you have any questions, please let me know. Now I want you to try it thinking about yourself. Okay, here I put the question, how have I changed? Okay, and I put a couple of examples about myself. For example, a few years ago, I played with dolls. Okay, I like to play with dolls. These days, I work long hours and I don't like to play anymore. In a year, I will be starting my own business. I am going to work longer hours. Okay, so now I want you to do one about yourself. Okay, how have you changed over the years? Now we're gonna be talking about contrast in the future, making some predictions. Okay, so what if we change something today? What will happen tomorrow? Okay, so thinking about that, I'm going to explain to you about the first conditional. In English, we have conditionals to talk mainly about consequences. In this case, we're going to be talking about the first one. Okay, we can identify the conditional sentence whenever we see the if clause. Okay, so for example, the structure is very simple. So we're gonna put the if clause plus a sentence in the present, because it's a present situation that we're talking about. We're gonna change something today that will affect the future. Okay, plus a future consequence in this case. So, for example here, if I study hard, I will get a high-paying job. Very easy. If I get a high-paying job, I might save a lot of money. If I save a lot of money, I may buy a car next year. Okay? And I want you to take a look at this. Okay? Might and may. Okay? These are modal verbs of possibility. What means that I am not sure that is going to happen, but I think so. Okay? Will is a little bit more the expression of the future time. Okay? We can use will, or we can use, I don't know, if I study hard, I am going to buy a car next year, for example. That you can use going to or will, that are expressions of time in the future. And if you're not sure about what can happen with this present situation, you can use a modal verb to express possibility. Okay? It might happen, it might not. I don't know. Probably. Okay? So now, I want you to notice here I put a little arrow because it's possible to switch the sentences, okay? I can start with my future consequence and finish my sentence with the present situation. For example, I will get a high-paying job if I study hard, okay? And it's very important to know that whenever we have the if clause in the second part of the sentence, we have to add a comma between the first clause and the second clause, okay? Now, I want you to try it. It's very, very simple, okay? If you do these things today, how do you think the future consequences will be, okay? And you can find more practice in page number 62 in your student book. If you have any questions, please let me know.